30 years ago, I photographed Martin Scorsese. I only had about 10 minutes. The shoot was completely straightforward, almost formulaic. Technically, I was nothing more than a passport photo producing machine. And yet, one of the pictures from that session is still earning money today. It's appeared in newspapers, magazines, books, exhibitions, and even t-shirts. So, how does a 10-minute shoot turn into a 30-year asset? Back in the late 1990s, I photographed a lot of major American stars when they came through London promoting films, books, and projects. It was a totally different time. It was a different era. Today, if a big star appears on the cover of a British magazine, invariably the images tend to be supplied by the film studios, having first been shot over in the US. The whole process now is heavily controlled by PRs. Back then, things were different. Photographers in different territories around the world, London, Paris, Berlin, would each get their own shoot. There was actually a magazine industry back then. I mean, it's over now, really. And each publication had a bit of leverage. They demanded their own shoot. As a result, the iconic portraits of that kind of define the 90s and earlier were diverse rather than the largely boring and homogenized imagery that we see today. In March 1998, Martin Scorsese, I'm going to be impertinent and refer to him herein as Marty, was in London for an event organised by The Guardian. I guess there was a contact, a connect between The Guardian and The Observer even back then, and that's where I got my opportunity. At that point, he'd already made films like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, The King of Comedy, Goodfellas. He was firmly established as one of the great directors of his generation. The shoot was at the Dorchester, a kind of like traditional posh hotel. I spent a chunk of my life photographing in their somewhat chintzy suites, which all tended to look the same. So over time, I developed a habit. I'd be driving west from Hackney and I'd stop in Brick Lane where they'd have all these fabric shops for making saris and things like that. And I'd pick out a piece of fabric to use as a backdrop. The stranger, the better. It was a wonderfully cheap alternative to Colorama, which is more perishable. And afterwards, I'd be able to give the material to my then wife, Jane, who was into making her own clothes. So I'd end up with a nice pair of shorts or whatever, made from material that had been previously used as a backdrop. My Hasselblad was loaded, a bit of black and white and cross-processed colour. The session was so short, there won't really be enough images for cutaways. So I did one roll where he was being interviewed, kind of environmental portraits with the daylight coming in through the big windows. And then when he'd got up and he was ready to be photographed, I ushered him towards the studio I created with my ring flash. Scorsese was really good company. He's, as you'd expect, he was smart, funny, direct. I remember he looked at my sparkly blue backdrop and immediately joked that I was going for the Vegas look. When time is tight, you have to become more focused, more decisive. Don't overthink. Simply ask for what you want. I had noticed his extraordinarily unkempt eyebrows. So, on impulse, I asked him to wink. It's not something I often do. It's a bit of a cheap trick. Doesn't really tell you anything about the subject. But done well, it can be really impactful on the page. or on the cover of a magazine. I mean, just look at ID, which every subject had one eye covered. But the moment he did it, I was pretty sure I'd got something. His eyebrow kind of swallowed up his eye, and his face contorted into something, without wishing to blow my own trumpet, dare I say, iconic. The picture had attitude and humour. It's kind of him somehow. It's fascinating. Portrait photography, celebrity portrait photography. The thing about it is how unpredictable it is. Most days you turn up for work hoping to avoid calamity, but every so often, maybe, I think Martin Parr talks about this. I remember talking to him about it. Every so often, maybe once a year, lightning strikes. You make a picture that somehow is bigger. It escapes the short lifespan of the magazine that commissioned it. It gets published and then develops a life of its own. It's a picture that kind of endures. The other photographs from that shoot, I didn't even bother printing them up. They've never been seen. This is where the story becomes less about Scorsese and more about photography. People often focus about the original fee, the day rate, the commission, the check, or now backs payment that arrives after you've done the shoot. But for me, the most valuable part of this assignment wasn't the fee, obviously. It was retaining the copyright, because every time that image is licensed, the photograph earns again. Although the 10 minutes I spent ended in 1998, the image is still generating income in 2025. And that's an extraordinary thing. The fact that a photograph can become an asset. Not every photograph does. Most don't. And you'll probably not know which ones will, which is precisely why the ownership of our work matters. Another example, there was recently a Netflix documentary about the Murdoch dynasty, a sort of real life succession. And I licensed photographs I'd taken of Rupert Murdoch and two of his children, James and Elizabeth. Again, these portraits were made years ago. In fact, two of the magazines for which I was commissioned to make the pictures don't really exist anymore. But because I retained the copyright, the images are still there and still have value. So luck plays a part. But the main message is, whenever possible, that photographers should fight to retain their copyright, because the assignment may only last 10 minutes, but the value of the pictures can last a lifetime. I really like this picture, so we've decided to include Marty in our online shop. So if you fancy a print of the great auteur for your wall, check out the website. And thanks for watching.